Every single year, the NFL head coaching carousel comes and goes. Whether you have guys coming in, people recently fired and retaining new jobs, there's always something new and something old. Everything's kind of coming together. And with the NFL season halfway, or approaching that halfway mark, I felt it was the right time to kind of say who's saved their job so far, who's in danger of losing it, and who's made some progress. So we're going to do four categories. We're going to go freezing, who's completely safe regardless for the rest of the season. Cold, I think they've saved their job, but I think a disastrous finish could potentially hinder their ability to retain their job as coach. Warm, who, if they don't act up quick, it could be trouble. And on fire, I believe they will be fired by the end of the season, if not midway through. So we're going to start with freezing. Robert Saleh. So I wasn't entirely a big believer in Saleh in 2021. I thought the team had a lot of energy and they fought for him, kind of like Dan Campbell, but I felt like he just sometimes didn't get it. And maybe that was Zach Wilson. Maybe that was just kind of the development and the growing pains of the rookie year. But I think in New York, there's a lot of expectations, and you can really start to feel the walls caving in, especially if the Jets had finished in a bad spot starting this year. That's completely the opposite. Robert Saleh has done a fantastic job in year two, making it work. Zach Wilson was out for the first couple weeks of the season, and the Jets were able to kind of pick up the pieces with Joe Flacco, and they've started to find their identity, which is exactly what Saleh is. He's a defensive head coach, and this team has this fantastic secondary. They've drafted really, really well. And I think that's something that I underrated going into the season is how well these rookies will play. Sauce Gardner, perfect example, is playing himself into the defensive rookie of the year. He is phenomenal. He in coverage, understanding of zones, his man coverage too. He's really good. He's a really good cornerback. And usually these first year corners either get toasted or they're really good. And he's found that balance of really, he's learned a lot and he's really playing well. And he's got kind of an attitude to him. And I really like that. But this team has a lot of energy. They're 5-3 right now. Yes, they did just lose to the Patriots, but this is a team that I feel like once Zach Wilson is taken care of, I think that their loss on Sunday was almost a blessing in disguise where they can see, yeah, Zach Wilson's probably not a franchise quarterback. If this team gets a quarterback in the offseason through the draft or through free agency or a trade, maybe somebody's disgruntled with a contract. Maybe it's Lamar Jackson. That's just something I'm throwing out there. I'm not saying anything. I'm just throwing it out there. But that's something that Jets team is one piece away from really contending in a division that's loaded. They've done a great job this year. So freezing for me is Robert Saleh. He's done an excellent job in year two. For cold, it was Mike McCarthy. I think Mike McCarthy this year was make or break in Dallas, especially after last year's disappointing loss. You win the NFC East and you have a home playoff game and you fall to the NFC runner up in San Francisco. I could see this going one of two ways. I see the Cowboys finishing really strong this year, maybe 13-4, and they have a home playoff game or they're on the road in the first round. And if they get exposed or they get toasted, and it's another game where they have a ton of penalties that hold them back, I could see Jerry Jones making a hasty move and firing Mike McCarthy despite the job that he's done. He's saved his job for the most part. They're 6-2. They've been able to overcome the Dak Prescott injury. And I think they went 3-1 or 4-1 when Cooper Rush was playing in. They've played more efficient. They're running the ball better. The defense is playing really well as with Micah Parsons spearing that. So there's a lot of good going with Dallas, but the only reason I had him at cold is because I could see Jerry Jones making a hasty move and going, hey, we maybe let's say that they play the NFC South winner and they lose that game. Maybe it's the Atlanta Falcons or it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where there's an inferiority kind of complex there where the Dallas Cowboys are a much better team and they performed much better in the regular season. Yet fall to a Marcus Mariota led Falcons, or they fall to a Tom Brady team that's really struggled this year, and Jerry Jones pulls the plug on the Mike McCarthy experiment. Okay, this one I feel really strongly about. This is my warm, and it's Cliff Kingsbury. Now, he's got a whole lot of nothing. There's a lot of talent there. He had Kyler Murray, the number one overall draft pick. There's just I've never been really convinced that Cliff Kingsbury was the guy to solve Arizona's problems. And he's 27, 29, and 1 as the Arizona Cardinals head coach. It feels like it's the same pattern every year. They start strong, they really make things work. And then after game 7 or 8, it just kind of falls apart. And here's an interesting record. I think it's midway through the season. There was a stat. I'm not sure if it's game 7 or 8. He's 8-18 in those like final stretch games where you really need to make things work. In November and December, he's fallen apart. Most notably last year, where they went 7-0 and then they finished 3-5 in that first stretch, and they got blown out by the Rams. That's honestly Cliff Kingsbury's crowning achievement in the NFL is making the playoffs and getting smoked by the Rams. They won the Super Bowl, sure, but it wasn't even close. The Cardinals weren't competitive at all. And you can make excuses here and there, but it feels like Cliff Kingsbury, he's a fantastic offensive coach. I could see him as a really efficient offensive coordinator in this league, but there's a lot to manage. And I think if the Cardinals miss out on the playoffs this year, and in an NFC where there's a lot of openings, there's a lot of teams that are vulnerable, and there's a lot of old guard teams like the Packers and the Buccaneers that are going to leave spots open. The Cardinals need to capitalize and they need to pull together some games so they can make that spot because they got an electric quarterback in Kyler Murray, one of the best receivers, if not the best, in DeAndre Hopkins, and a lot of young pieces on defense. This is a team that has a lot going for them, and they really haven't had a lot to show for it. And then my on fire. This is basically my recruitment to get Josh McDaniels back in New England. Josh McDaniels isn't going to work in the NFL, guys. There's a lot of these one possession losses. I think they have 4 currently, whether it's questionable decisions against Kansas City, that's the Chargers. It just feels like this team who built so much momentum last year with Rich Bisaccia. I honestly felt like they should have hired him to be the head coach just because of everything they went through last year. You had the Henry Ruggs situation, the John Gruden emails. So much happened, and yet they were still able to find a way to get into the playoffs. It just feels like McDaniels, while he's had his injuries on this team, Darren Waller's been out, Hunter Renfro's missed time. It feels like his inability to get his best players involved has been put on display. Davante Adams doesn't feel as dominant as they did in Green Bay. I feel like Green Bay made the emphasize. They emphasize each week, we got to get the ball to Davante. It just feels like he kind of goes to it occasionally, and Davante's not the focal point of the offense, or Hunter Renfro's not getting his touches on third down. The running game has certainly improved. Josh Jacobs has been running the ball well, but when you get blanked by the Saints, who are just mightily struggling this year, Michael Thomas, I just read on Twitter, is on the IR again. It's a Saints team that's been so up and down. You can't put up 0 points in an NFL game, especially when you're the offensive guy that's been hired over to be able to kind of solve these problems. And I thought that all that time in New England gave Josh McDaniels time to kind of grow and foster his abilities. And the way he handled the Mac Jones situation, where what we're seeing right now, Mac Jones was very efficient in year 1, and maybe it's part Patricia in year 2, but there's been a definite decline. I think McDaniel's scheme really helped Mac Jones become what he did in the NFL, became a top 16 quarterback. And so I thought, okay, you go to the Las Vegas, you have Derek Carr, Josh Jacobs, Hunter Renfro, Darren Waller, Davante Adams, so many weapons. The Raiders just don't really feel like they have an identity and they don't feel bought in, like they're fighting for their coach. Rich Bisaccia last year felt like every single down the Raiders were must-see football, and they just feel kind of up and down. So I feel like, especially with the track record that Josh McDaniels has, he's currently 13-22 as an NFL head coach. Maybe that Davis gives him more time. I'm just not sure. And I think Josh McDaniels is going to be on the chopping block when the season is all said and done. The AFC West is too competitive. Denver might be starting to figure it out. Kansas City is going to win this division again. The Chargers are going to win enough games to keep you out of a potential spot for a playoff position. I just think Josh McDaniels is going to receive the axe when it comes time for December. Let's say the Raiders drop 3 straight games. The Raiders are 2-8. Do you have a reason to keep McDaniels around when you know what his track record is? I'm not sure. And I think the Raiders just need to restart and find a coach that just can buy in, or just hire Bisaccia, what they should have done in the first place. But guys, thank you as always for listening to the Man with the Plan podcast. This was episode 107 and another new venue. I'm going to take a break and edit and eat some food because I'm starving. But guys, thank you as always. Good luck to Pinewood once again in their playoff game tomorrow on Friday night. I'm recording this on Thursday, which is why I said tomorrow night. Guys, thank you as always. Take care and have a great weekend.